It's a brand new year here at 52 Qs, and I hope you had a good holiday season, and I'm sure you've heard it a billion times, but Happy New Year. I know that 2026 is going to be amazing. Today, we are talking all about influences. Where do they come from? Are influences a product of our culture, our upbringing, or at what point do references kind of bake into your own creativity and start becoming influences? So I am joined by community mentor Jeff LaPlante as we talk all about influences on episode 252 of the 52 Qs podcast. What is happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Qs podcast, where each week we talk all about the world of production and library music. My name is Dave Croft, and not only am I a composer, I'm also a professor of music production, and it is so good to be here with you today, whether you are watching on YouTube or listening to the audio on the go. Just know that I appreciate you spending part of your day here with me. Also, as always, I appreciate our family and friends subscribers who are composers just like you, looking to write better music and find success in the sync music industry. And 52 Qs is there to help with workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, live streams, pitching to real music libraries, an amazing community, and a ton more. If you want to join us, it is free to join. You can head over to 52qs.com, and subscription tiers are very reasonably priced, I think so. Either way, we would love to have you. And it is our first episode of the new year with our new format, and I want to welcome to the podcast our first co-host, Mr. Jeff LaPlante. Jeff, what is happening, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we were chatting before we started, and kind of like, what is this going to look like? What is this going to feel like? Well, this is episode 252 for week 1 of 2026, and to be honest, we're just kind of figuring it out as we go, and hopefully that's okay. And we talked last week about the changes to the podcast, why we want to make some of the changes to the podcast, bringing our community mentors into the podcast and helping this to be more conversational. And we're still doing instructional content. It's just going to be focused over on YouTube, and they're going to be a little bit more streamlined. I think less kind of Dave just waxing philosophically about mixing for an hour. And so that content is still happening. It's just going to be focused over on YouTube, and that's going to leave the podcast, what we're doing here, more talking about the industry, talking about creativity, talking about production and library music, obviously, talking about our process, maybe talking about ups and downs, things that we are struggling with. And that's what we're going to be doing here. And so Jeff is one of our 4 mentors. And Jeff, before we get started, why don't you kind of introduce yourself to the audience? They've seen you before. We've had you on the podcast, but that's been now a couple of years. You've had a ton of success. You've had a lot of success through Taxi, and I know you've been featured over on Taxi more than once. But why don't you introduce yourself to the podcast audience again?
Well, hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jeff LaPlante. I've been a member of 52 Qs pretty much since the Facebook days, and I absolutely love the community. I like the vision and the goal of the community. I think Dave offers so much to aspiring composers and already seasoned composers as well. So I'm very happy to be here. I've been a musician my whole life, but just writing production music for the past 5 years or so. I've found a bit of success, probably not the level of Dave yet, but I have a lot more time to go, and I'm not stopping. So.
Yeah, and you've had a couple of really good placements, and one of the things I really like about you is you're very tenacious, you know what I mean? And you're kind of fearless in pitching to libraries. And to be honest, it's something that I aspire to. I don't know if I've ever said that. Like when I see you're like, yeah, I just landed another deal with this publisher and all of those things. And I got to tell you, and we'll get to the topic here in just a second. We're talking about influences here, but here at the top, as we're kind of introducing the world, the internet, or all 5,000 subscribers or so to you, where does that come from? Or just like are you completely immune to like being told no, or tell us a little bit about kind of that process for you?
No, it's just part of the game, really. I mean, there are a lot of no's, for everyone, and you just have to understand that's part of the journey here. So I mean, I'm not going to come on the community and say, oh, I got another rejection today, and I only come on when I have something good to say and say, oh, I got accepted by another library. But there's a lot of libraries to choose from. Some are more picky than others. Some of them might not be looking for what you have at that moment, and then maybe a year from now they'll send you an email and, hey, do you still have those songs? No, they're long gone, sorry. So rejection is just part of the game, but the trick is to just not take it personally. It's just they don't need that right now because they might be working on a specific show that's like totally different from what you had just offered. It doesn't mean the music's bad.
And one of the reasons, or one of the ways you found success, and it's been working really, really, really well for you, is mainly in like pop production, some EDM, and working with vocalists. How has that whole process been working for you? And is that one of your kind of secrets to your success?
Well, I was getting a little tired of doing the same thing over and over again. Just pop album after pop album, hip hop with pop influences. And about a year and a half ago, I had started working with a singer, and just kind of as an experiment to see if it would work, if I could take my skills and also at the same time bring somebody else through the sync business, just starting out. And I ended up really falling in love with it. It was more of luck, really, because the singer that I found is as prolific as I am, and she is so talented, lyrically, writing melodies. Her voice is phenomenal. Not many top liners are going to give you all three, and I just got very, very lucky with somebody who is pumping out her tracks or her vocal takes as quick as I could produce the underscores. So we're just up and running. I think we've done almost 150 songs in about a year and a half.
Wow. And you guys are like showing no signs of slowing down. You're bringing things into into our weekly feedback sets, and they're great. They're all so good, and they just get better and better and better. And
yeah, I mean, if they weren't getting signed, we would probably say, okay, this is not working. But almost everything has gotten signed, and we've gotten a lot of placements, on reality TV and whatnot, and companies are wanting more. So
yeah. Well, that's fantastic. And in the community, Jeff is going to be helping, and his mentor focus is specifically on pop, EDM, and vocal production. Like we were talking about last week when we had Shannon on. Bringing the mentors on is as much about lifting folks in the community up who are successful, and we trust them, as much as it is about filling in some of the gaps. Like, I don't have to be everything to all people. And so bringing in folks who are from within the community and amazing at what they do so that they can help out. So that's one of the reasons. Really excited about having you on board. And in the next few weeks, we are going to be featuring our mentors over at 52cues.com/coaching, where you can start booking one-on-one sessions. So if you have some vocal production that you would like help with, or pop or EDM or hip hop, then Jeff is your guy right here. And so be on the lookout for that. That's not quite ready to get launched up soon, but it will be. It will be soon. We're just gathering, bios and headshots and ironing out just some of the logistics of all of that. So all that to say, Jeff, I'm glad you're here, and thank you for being the first of the co-hosts here at 52Qs podcast. We're really glad that you're with us here, man.
I'm honored that you asked me to do it. We have many people at my level in the community that are going to be awesome co-hosts and just offering different perspectives.
That's right.
Because we're all about helping each other here, and it's awesome.
So today's main topic, we're talking about influences, what they come from, how important they are, and how does something go from like a reference into an influence, and how influences affect your musical DNA. Now, I've talked about my musical journey before. I talked about how my parents were into as much about like oldies as they were Beethoven. And my dad loved Sousa marches, and he loved swing music. Jeff, what are some of your influences that are finding their way into your cues?
Well, I've always been a sucker for a great melody. That's been a big thing for me. So growing up, I think in my early childhood, my mom would always be playing James Taylor, Carly Simon, that sort of thing. So like you listen to that stuff, and the melodies are so well put together. When I was about 10 years old, my life changed and I discovered 80s hair metal. So Def Leppard was my band, and I think I cast my lot correctly because they're still going strong now.
Yeah, they're still selling out arenas.
Those Poison fans didn't get so lucky.
Well.
But no, Def Leppard has always been my major influence, and even nowadays, they're still producing music because they love to do it. They're so loyal to their craft and the art of songwriting, the art of production, just making sure everything sounds as good as it can. And their work ethic is second to none. So I went through a phase of that's all I would listen to, and I just sucked it up. I would buy the cassette tapes, and it wasn't just Def Leppard. It was, Warrant, Winger, Europe, all those bands.
Like wow, you went full hair metal, man.
Oh yeah, I was like a little kid, like with my eyes wide open,
Mr.
like,
Big,
bugging out. Yeah, I had everything. I had all of it,
Rats with 2 T's.
And the one thing that I would say came from that influence is those guys were such good musicians. That the musicianship kind of got lost in the early to mid 90s a little bit. It became more about the grunge image and style, whereas those 80s bands there might be a stigma because of the fashion and everything, the big hair, those guys could play. And
the musicianship of those players were off the chart, man.
Yeah.
Nobody's really talking about the musicianship and the technical prowess of Kurt Cobain, right?
Right.
No more than people are touting the technical aptitude of Johnny Rocket, from Sex Pistols, right? It's just not what that's about.
Yeah, one thing about Kurt Cobain though is not many people could sing like that with that raw emotion. Like you try to sing "Smells Like Teen Spirit" in karaoke, your voice is going to be gone for a week. So there's definitely some talent involved in that.
Yeah. That's for sure. Like you looking at some of Dave Grohl's drum parts. I mean, they're pretty hard to play accurately, and he was doing it every single night, for 2 and 3 hours, on the road or whatever. But as far as the technical chops, if you will. It's just not what the music was about.
Yeah,
But I could see
that's
how.
like top 1% of guitar players could play those 80s guitar solos.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't
Absolutely.
happen anymore. And then from there, I when grunge came along, I said no, I'm just not into that. So I discovered progressive rock, and
Mm.
that's when I got into Dream Theater. And then I went back to 70s progressive rock like Rush, and I, from there it was okay. We can take Yes and Kansas and Styx,
Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd. Yeah,
Yep.
and I discovered lots of old music, throughout the 90s. I kind of went backwards because I wasn't really into what was happening at the time. So when you talk about bands like Rush and Dream Theater, they continued the musicianship and the talent aspect of
Yeah.
music
Yep.
that the late 80s bands had. So I was able to keep on, listening to that sort of music, even though it fell out of popularity. And the way that I did it was I went back to the 70s to find it.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely have a soft spot in my heart for Rush, and I think there's also a drummer's journey. Drummers, and I've talked about this before. You're either like a Led Zeppelin fan or a Rush fan. Very few drummers that I know are equal fans of both. They're either John Bonham or Neil Peart. But no, the same thing, man. I don't want to call it a phase because that's not fair. Because I still listen to it fondly. I mean, and like Shannon and I, we listened to the entire "Wish You Were Here" album just last week. We drove around. It was really warm. We took the top down. It's a gorgeous sunset. We're driving around Orlando, and we have a little spot that we sit in to watch the sunset and watch the planes. And we were listening to like "Shine On You Crazy Diamond," "Welcome to the Machine," and that was just last week. And so these things have obviously had really long tendrils, long like tributaries into our own creative process. And as we were listening to that album, I realized there are elements of what I'm doing now as a composer that I can draw a straight line to things like "Wish You Were Here." The long kind of not meandering, but the long intro to "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" with like pedal points and really kind of explorative type sounds. Yeah, there's a direct line. I listen to some of old Rush stuff and I'm like, wow, there are things that I do on tracks that I've collaborated with you on that are directly attributable to what I learned from playing like Tom Sawyer
Yeah.
or Subdivisions or YYZ. Do you find those tendrils in your current composing? Do you find the hair metal influences or the prog rock influences?
Absolutely. Not so much for my pop tracks, but when I'm doing my rock tracks and I'm writing the initial riff, all Rush is definitely going to creep in there somewhere. So that's probably what happens with you when you hear my guitar part. You're like, oh, I know what to do.
What would Neil do? WWND.
Yeah, and there are some newer bands that are carrying on that. Like I mentioned, Dream Theater is like carrying the torch of prog, and into the future. And there's others like a band called Circus Maximus that I'm really into. They're working on a new album now. So the focus of musicianship and talent and taking passion and care into your product, it's still there. It's not all about just making money.
What can be tough though when you look back at some of those highly talented, like musicianship on full display. Like I feel like I owe Kurt Cobain an apology for what I said a few minutes ago when I talked about musicianship. It's just the musicianship isn't like front and center. You listen to Rush, the musicianship is front and center. You listen to Steely Dan, you listen to to those bands, yes, Pink Floyd, the musicianship is in full display. When you listen to like Corey Wong, right? Snarky Puppy, the musicianship is front and center. But some bands, it's a little more subversive. I think, I listen to like an Ed Sheeran record, and that's pop and it's very, very digestible. But if you actually like listen to what's going on, there's very, very talented people involved in those records. And by the way, parenthetically, some of the best mixed records are like the Ed Sheeran stuff is just chef's kiss. So good. And so are there any non like band influences? Like for me, in high school, I know this would have been middle school when I watched Back to the Future and Alan Silvestri's score for that. That was a moment. And I had the cassette, the soundtrack. On one side was like all the pop songs like Johnny Be Good and Roll With Me Henry and like all the commercial music. But then on the backside, they had the Back to the Future suite. And I wore that cassette out on my Walkman because I loved that music. And that was really influential for me, especially like coming up through band, and so, and playing, in musical theater and playing in orchestras and that kind of thing. Like I could see that led into influences, composer influences like Thomas Newman, Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman was probably my second biggest influence. The 1989 Batman soundtrack, when I first heard bum, 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 like I'm like, oh my gosh. And I remember in high school, dude, I was full on Batman fever, man. Like full on. I wore Batman shirts. I even painted Batman logo on my trombone case. That's a story for another day, why I had a trombone. But as a composer, Danny Elfman, Alan Silvestri, Thomas Newman, Gustav Holst music, Beethoven, even Stravinsky, Tchaikovsky. These were very big influences. Notice like Mozart and like John Williams, those were like the quote unquote mainstream composers that folks often cited as influences. And I don't know, I kind of resisted those. Not that Beethoven isn't a mainstream composer, but he only wrote like 9 symphonies versus Mozart's 40 plus symphonies. Are there any for you? Are there any kind of like non-band type influences that you can point to?
Well, my favorite movie ever is Rocky IV, and I think it's mostly because of the music. It's there was a main composer for the movie named Vince DiCola, and he is just absolutely brilliant with his innovative synthesizer techniques that he used. He also did the Transformers soundtrack way back in the day. So it's it's the same guy.
The ones that aren't Weird Al Yankovic, right? Like Dare to Be Stupid and all that.
So if you listen to Rocky IV, like it's just training montage after training montage. It's like, and the music is so inspiring, and I think I probably watched that movie over 100 times when I was a kid. So that is definitely in my DNA. I'll be writing with my brother sometimes, and he'll play a chord, and I'm like, that's the DiCola chord.
And Rocky IV, was that the one with Dolph Lundgren?
Yeah.
The Russians?
Yeah.
Yep. Do you find those things kind of working their way into your modern productions?
Yeah. I mean, I throw a DiCola chord into a lot of my cues, and it just, I'm not sure if anybody else gets a rise from it, but it's always my favorite part of the cue. Just watching things, movies, television shows, a lot of theme songs, like the Incredible Hulk theme song. Is just those things are like burnt into your brain as you grow up. The second you hear it again, it just brings you back to your childhood.
Now you're talking about the sad man walking away, closing credits.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, I went there. I flashbacked. No, you're right, man.
So if any television show had a theme song, like Knight Rider. a Knight Rider theme, you know, ticka ticka ticka, that arpeggiated like synth.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah,
dun,
so
dun, dun,
good.
dun. Yeah. Magnum PI was a big one on me.
Yeah.
It was my ringtone on my old Motorola Razr. And I actually paid 99 cents to have every time my phone rang in terrible general MIDI. Bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, dun, dun, dun,
Yeah,
dun, dun,
yeah,
dun, dun, dun. That was it.
and
I
then
paid real life money.
A-Team. Ba,
Yep.
ba, 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 ba,
Bum, bum,
ba. Yeah.
bum. Yep. Bum, ba-dum, bum.
Yeah.
Bum, ba-da-dum, dum.
So I
Yep.
think it's unavoidable that those things creep into even the music we're doing now, 40 years later, because they got programmed into our brains, our DNA, if you will, and
Yeah.
it's very hard to not use that. Even subconsciously, it just happens, which sometimes competes with what the brief asks for. So you have to keep it in check.
Yeah, when you find yourself kind of like chasing a creative rabbit trail, and before you know it, you're like, oh, this isn't my woods anymore, and you're lost. And then you choose, okay, I can either see where this path takes us or try to double back. I find it's generally more rewarding to just let the cue be whatever it's turned into. Might not fit the brief anymore, but probably not going to be very successful if you try to like shoehorn it back into what it wasn't going to be to begin with.
It depends on how far down the rabbit hole you've gone. Sometimes you notice right away and you're like, oh, wait, the deadline is tomorrow. I can't.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't have time to start over again, Dave. This is me being mean to future Dave. No, that's a really good point. And it kind of leads to the idea of like, where do influences come from? What really are influences? And I've talked about, I believe on the podcast before, well, I know I teach it at Full Sail, the spectrum of originality. You know, on one side of the spectrum, you have plagiarism, right? Which is you passing off somebody else's intellectual property as your own. Right. And then if you move up, you get into cloning, which is just shy of like illegal, right? And you're not actually plagiarizing. And then you get into modeling, which is where you take one reference and then extract all the musical information and create something new based off of that. And then you get into references, where you are taking many different ideas and maybe like taking a melody from this and not taking it, but you're allowing yourself to kind of let it influence you. And maybe the chord progression over here, maybe the instrumentation from this cue, and you're kind of Frankensteining, cobbling together, or let's think of like panning, you're kind of panning for gold and pulling out little gems and nuggets. And then if you do that long enough, then as you are studying references, they become influences. So I believe that in addition to influences arising from your childhood, from your culture, or just your own personal experience, and like how much of this is you have consumed, I think influences can also be generated after you've spent a lot of time with a certain type of cue. And you just studied the references for so long that they're just inside you. And all of those references you've studied have formed kind of the groundwater from which you draw inspiration when you go to write something new. Like I've written by now, wow, probably 200 just dramedy cues. I don't need to listen to references anymore when I write dramedy. I know what the recipe is. I've memorized the recipe. And at this point, it's just me tinkering with the formula. Are there certain kind of references that you've listened to for so long that they're just now, they are influences? And do they kind of run in parallel with your childhood and cultural and personal influences? What do you think?
Well, I've been lucky enough to have some libraries that send me references that were placements on the previous season to what I'm writing for. Mm-hmm. So whenever there's a new season coming up, they'll go ahead and cherry pick all of the ones that got placed, because that's what the production company likes, and they will include that playlist on the brief for the newest season. So it takes a lot of listening, you know. There's not one reference that I would listen to over and over again, because I, you know, want to diversify a little bit. And if you listen to just the same track over and over again, I think probably you're going to get a little stagnant in your output. But if you listen to all of the music that's been successful in the genre that you're going for, you could kind of piece together what's working and what is the common denominator of all of them, you know. And I will say this: if you don't enjoy listening to the genre you're writing for, you probably shouldn't be writing in that genre, because you have to listen constantly. That is just part of the game, you know. It takes hours and hours and hours of like sucking in both consciously and subconsciously the DNA of the genre that you're trying to be successful in. So yeah, I would listen to all of the ones that were placed on the previous season. If you work with a library that doesn't provide that for you for whatever reason, you actually have to take the time to go and watch the season of the show.
Go make your own playlist. I mean, it's never been easier to find like reference material. I almost always, if I'm getting a new album brief, then I will make a Spotify playlist, especially if I'm not given one. And my Spotify is filled with playlists from like NFL 2022 or Golf 2021 or Temptation Island season whatever. And I will almost always fill up a playlist, whether it's Spotify or YouTube Music or Apple Music or whatever. That's, you know, find whatever works for you.
Now, sometimes that takes time and effort. You have to sometimes watch shows that you don't really enjoy watching. The music's great, but sometimes the content on some of these reality shows, it's like, just make sure the kids aren't in the room when we're doing our research here. But how are you getting them on your Spotify? Are you Shazamming everything that pops up, or is there a different way?
Typically, what I will, especially if I'm given a reference from the library, it might be one or two references, the finding similar artists in Spotify is very, very helpful. Like I am wrapping up this album that I started in December on uplifting indie pop. And so I was given a playlist of probably 7 or 8 tracks. And then I took each one of those tracks and kind of followed the thread of similar artists and then created my own playlist of, and here's the thing, and we're kind of blurring the line between influences and references. And I think they're much more related than we like to think. But I created if I listen to a reference from a related artist and I thought as I heard it, I know how I would do this. Like if I'm listening to a reference and the harmonic structure, the chords used, the instrumentation, the form, all of that, I'm like, I can do that. I know how I would accomplish this from a production side, then it would go in the list. If I heard something that kind of sparked my creativity, that I'm like, oh, this is how I can take this melodic line and reframe it, then it would go into the list. And then I would listen to that passively, which is where I think influencing differs from referencing. When I'm referencing, that is an active choice. That is an active process. I am actively listening. I might be doing a prism analysis. We've talked about that on the podcast before, unpacking the chord progression, the rhythmic structure, the instrumentation, the structure itself, and the melodic choices, prism, right? That is a very active, academic type of feeding your muse directly. Whereas passive listening, I might be driving on my way to work. I might be doing, taking the trash out. I'll put headphones on and might be my morning walks. just putting on the headphones where I am not forensically listening to every detail, but letting it just kind of absorb, I guess, into my subconscious, so that when I go to sit down to write or to sit down to reference, all of that passive listening is still there, just kind of influencing influencing my creative choices. Now, often what will happen as I am passively listening, something will spark. Like I'll just be on my morning walk doing my thing, and then I'll hear something and I'll be, ooh, what's that? And then I'll back up and listen to that track again. And then I might listen to it like 9 or 10 times in a row. And that's when I know that I'm onto something. That's something that has shifted from influencing to referencing. But that's the way that I like to do it, is follow the rabbit trail of similar artists, listening to tracks and references that I know that I could successfully accomplish with my production skills, the tools that I have available, and the time that I have available. Create a playlist, passively listen to it, and then kind of mine that playlist for ideas that then I can transition into an actual cue.
Yeah.
Do you do something kind of similar, or
Yeah,
what's your
absolutely.
process?
I'm lucky enough to enjoy pop music. I just love it. The melodies and the production, these days are just off the charts, and that it ties along with the musicianship, right? So
Right.
now it's the producers that are like creating all these innovative techniques to make music just sound so incredible. So it's a craft, and I appreciate the work and effort that it takes to make something sound that good. That's why I've fallen in love with the production aspect, because it takes skill. So I want to make sure that whatever I'm listening to is not just going to be a task.
Mm.
It has to be enjoyable. So I'm lucky that when I'm going through the references, there are things that I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. Like I would listen to this just for enjoyment, even if it wasn't a reference. So I'll take those and make a iTunes playlist, and I'll listen to music all throughout the day in my classroom. I teach second grade, so when they're working, I'll throw on some music as long as there's no like vulgarity or anything,
Right.
And a lot of times it's instrumental stuff, so you don't have to worry about the
Like you have it
words.
kind of out in the classroom, like as students are working,
Yeah,
they can hear it.
yeah.
Yeah. What do they think of that, man?
Oh, they love it.
They,
Sometimes that's how I know one of my cues is working or not working, because if they're not doing anything, I know, oh, maybe this is a dud. But if they start like bobbing their head, I'm like, okay, I got one.
all right. All right. What do
Yeah.
your students think of Mr. LaPlante, the composer? I mean, I'm assuming that they know that your music's on TV and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's got to be cool, man.
They like it. Yeah. They kind of brag about me to their parents when they get home. They're
Oh,
like, guess what
uh,
my teacher does? It's it's cool. I have fun with it too. Like I'll play a horror tension track and like walk around like a zombie. Yeah.
oh, that's funny. Or
And I'll
y-
start laughing. Yeah.
yeah, or what you should do is like, okay, kids, here's our math test, and here comes the ominous tension.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am underscoring your emotion right now.
Yeah. So like when it's their silent reading time, I'll put on like a light piano cue or something
Oh
like that,
wow,
and it's just different moods throughout the day. Uh, and the
that's
music
fantastic.
kind of goes along with that. So it affords me the opportunity to listen to all my cues, either finished, published, or unfinished throughout the day, and I kind of like take little notes saying, "Oh, I need to change that edit point" or something like that. You know, it
That's cool.
helps.
Have you? This is totally unrelated to what we're talking about, but do you ever think about writing kids music like with you and Alora? You guys would make amazing kids tunes.
Yeah, I have. I do have a document of lyrics that I've done throughout the years, but I don't know. I haven't really pressed play on that project yet.
Right.
I
You
just
don't
got
enjoy
so much
listening
going
to.
on. No, I don't really enjoy uh, kids music.
Yeah.
Baby Shark. It's
Oh, oh god.
do I really want to put hours and hours and hours of work into something that I'm not really going to want to listen to.
Wow. I mean, that's a really sobering perspective, because I think we can get kind of caught in the trap of what's working. What do libraries need? And I'm going to write whatever they need. But if you don't like writing it, then man, I don't know. What kind of life is that? I'm not interested in that. And like I've talked about this before. I know libraries love trailer music. I do not enjoy writing trailers. I just don't. And I've come to grips with the fact that that's okay. I don't have to enjoy writing trailers. And to that end, I don't necessarily enjoy listening to trailers as well. But if I was just chasing it because this is what is getting placements, then I don't think that's very fulfilling and certainly not sustainable. So if you don't enjoy listening to kids' music, then you're probably not going to enjoy writing kids' music. And so it's not going to be very fun for you.
And really define kids' music. You know, I'm with kids all day long, and they love pop music. They love rock music. You play Baby Shark in a second grade classroom? No.
You're gonna get Skippy-Deed 6-7 right out the door.
Yeah. So you know, define kids' music as the cheesy, cartoony. I don't know. Not in my experience. Kids don't really like that stuff.
That's really good. I was, and I can't remember what I've talked about on the podcast, talking about kids' music. Over Thanksgiving, we had my 3 nephews visiting, with their folks over Thanksgiving, and one had an ear infection that we didn't know about. He was just really, really fussy, and the only thing that would placate this poor little guy, who was, I think he's under 3 years old, is Bluey. Now, I had never watched Bluey up to this point, and I'm just like, come on. I thought it was like Teletubbies or Blue's Clues, like these types of shows. But I got to say, man, it was actually pretty darn good. And the music was fantastic on that show. And I've since seen like a behind the scenes tour of the composer's studio. And he reminds me of us, right? He's kind of a one-man operation in a studio surrounded by a ton of toys. And I don't mean like Funko toys. I mean like musical toys. And it's all very much like, I bought this instrument because I'm going to use it on a cue for Bluey. And so I thought that was really, really good.
Yeah.
So the question for you, dear viewers or dear listeners, is what are your influences? Have you thought about influences, and where is the line between influencing and referencing? And is there a point where what you're listening to no longer is a reference, but is starting to influence you? When I really started pushing into tension music and like intrigue type cues, I realized that Thomas Newman was just coming out of me, because I had enjoyed his music so much, and it was so important to like my composer life. Thomas Newman was the first composer that I thought he's just a future version of me, and was one of the first composers that I could reverse engineer how he made the things that he makes. And I don't know if it was because there were relatively simpler textures, right? Usually you're not dealing with a full orchestra. You're dealing with like marimbas, which as a percussionist resonates with me. You're dealing with world percussion, which as a percussionist resonates with me. You're dealing with not overly ornate or classical, quote unquote, harmonic structures, which, I could relate to. And so it seemed very doable in a way that like even Alan Silvestri doesn't. Like you need an orchestra to pull off Silvestri. You don't need an orchestra to pull off Thomas Newman necessarily. So I hear Thomas Newman in my tension cues, to the point where I've tried to be a little bit more conscious about it. And if I listen back to my early cues, I'm like, okay, what I'm really doing here is copying Thomas Newman here. But I think we all do that, don't you? To some level, like even Questlove has said, in order to learn to create, you have to learn to recreate. But so what are some of your influences, listener, viewer? And what are some of your referencing techniques, and where is the line between referencing and influences? We would love to hear from you. Please let us know in the comments below. Really do appreciate all of those comments. But yeah, any final thoughts on influencing or influences and referencing there, Jeff?
I think we're all in this together, and the more we can share our own cues with each other, that's just another form of referencing, whether it's something that has been placed or something we've been working on in the community. We have weekly feedback, which we get to listen to each other's cues, whether it's in the early stages or a finished cue. And that is definitely a form of referencing as well. It doesn't have to be something that has been placed. It could be you listen to something that maybe Jens is just starting off, something that Jeff Hargrove is like ready to publish. During the feedback session, if something creeps into your transom that is going to eventually motivate you to write your own thing, then wonderful. References and motivation can come from anywhere.
That's, I didn't even think about like another source of influence is your mentors and your teachers. I mean, one of the reasons that my studio looks the way it does, with drums hanging on the wall, and there's like everywhere you look, there is usually a percussion instrument or something, is because my very first teacher in college, his studio was set up this way. It was like you go in and it was a little playground. And yeah. And my love of metric modulations and rhythms within rhythms, kind of like spokes in a wheel, and putting like 5-note patterns on a 4-note grid and winding it up and see what happens. That is a direct result of the influence of some of my composition professors. And so that's another source of influence.
Yeah, before I joined 52 Cues and got really into the community, I didn't really write much tension music, but watching you go through the process and like seeing the Friday morning videos of you actually writing a cue from start to finish, as I'm watching, I'm thinking, wait a second, I could do that, So throughout the years, I started slowly writing more tension, and now it's one of my top genres. My tension stuff is getting placements every day.
Well, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. What are some of your sources of influence? And so, yeah, Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today on the first inaugural co-host episode of 2026. And really appreciate you and looking forward to having you on. We haven't really just listener, we haven't really like set out any kind of formal schedule for this. We're playing it kind of loosey. So I imagine over time things will kind of settle in, but I hope you are here for the ride. And as we try it, see if it works. If it doesn't work, you know what? We'll change it, because none of this is set in stone, but I am not going to let perfect be the enemy of good. And so, which is a real stretch for me, Jeff. You got to know that when I wanted to like set out a spreadsheet and everybody has assigned dates and everybody signs up. Instead, I had to like put a pause on that. Like, Dave, don't over systematize this. Instead, hey, when are you available? Let's make it happen and see what happens. So,
and sometimes the audience appreciates the casual stuff and just like, hey, casual, nonchalant conversation between two composers that have had a fair amount of success. I just want to listen to them talk about stuff because I could relate to a lot of that. I think
absolutely.
I think not being so formal is a good thing.
100%, because that's what I want you, the listener, to feel like you are just hanging out. We're just hanging out. We're talking shop. And part of the strategy rework here in the podcast is to achieve that. And hopefully we accomplished that here today, and hopefully we'll accomplish that moving forward. But before we sign off, Jeff, maybe we should have started the podcast like this. What have you got going on? What are you working on these days, man?
I just did 5 hours of deliverables for a library that took 10 songs that I had done with Alora. So that was a good chunk of my weekend. I have to deliver some country hip hop songs that I did for one of the libraries that we both work with. These songs were not with Alora, but with other singers that the library had found for me to sing over my backing tracks. And those came out really cool as well. So I have to deliver those today. I'm going to be doing some rock tracks for the NFL on CBS that we have for the briefing room. I think those are due on Wednesday. I'm going to try to do some hip hop too for that brief. And then I have 3 pop tracks due on January 10th. So yeah, it'll be a busy week.
Yeah, dude, that is a busy week. Yeah, I am trying to wrap up some dangling projects from January. I've got an album of hip hop dramedy on deck that I've started. I've got this uplifting, inspirational indie pop for a dating show, putting the finishing touches on that. And I am also halfway through an investigative trip hop tension album. So I've got 3 albums right now. And of course, before the holidays, I was like, I've got 2 weeks. I'm not teaching or anything. Got 2 weeks, off from 50. Sure. Yeah. Here's what I want to do is I want to go spend time in the studio in my downtime. Jeff, do you think that happened?
Nope.
No, it did not happen. Instead, Shannon and I watched a lot of TV. We did like completely pull out everything from our kitchen, right? Like everything, and did a deep clean in the kitchen. And over the last week or so, we've been slowly putting it together, which is no small task. It feels eerily similar to moving, and I hate moving. But pulling everything out, washing everything, cleaning all the cabinets and everything, and then kind of reorganizing and putting it back, it has, I don't want to say it's put a damper on the holidays, but it definitely doesn't feel as holiday-y because there are boxes and stuff and all that around.
Yeah. And sometimes it's good to take a week off of music too, because when you come back to it, it kind of reinvigorates you a little bit. Whereas if you're writing every day, sometimes it could seem like a job or a chore, and it makes you not love it as much. But when you take a week off, you start missing it, and you realize you realize why you got into it in the first place is because you love to do it.
Yeah, and that's what I found myself. I found myself, first of all, getting a little bored, and I'm like, wow, what is this feeling? I'm feeling kind of restless, and am I bored, Shannon? She's like, yeah, because if you kind of work to exhaustion all week and then spend the weekend recovering from that exhaustion, then you don't have time to get bored. But I found myself getting bored, and I found myself like missing being here in the studio. Like I missed it, which is why, I guess I can say this. It's a Sunday. We are recording on a Sunday. Jeff, I don't know if you appreciate and understand how tectonic that is for me to let's fire up the camera and record a podcast on a Sunday. That's because I have bandwidth. I'm ready to jump back in. And so I do appreciate you taking time out of your Sunday, your weekend, because I know, do you start school tomorrow?
I do.
Are your kids back?
Yeah,
yep,
this is my last day of vacation.
Yeah, and you're spending it here talking to the faithful 52Qs audience. Well, we won't hold you, Jeff, any longer, or you, audience, any longer. Hope you appreciated this kind of new format. We're still going to be tweaking things. All that to say, I appreciate you, Jeff. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you, audience, for joining us. And let us know what you think in the comments below. We would love to hear from you as we wrap up episode number 252 of the 52 Qs podcast. But that's going to do it for us this week. Hope you had an amazing holiday season, and hope you're looking forward to an amazing year. But that's going to do it for us. And you know what? Even if your holidays weren't great, I am confident that you're going to have a fantastic year. How do I know that? Why do I believe that? Because I trust and believe that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Qs podcast is copyright 2026 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community or becoming a member subscriber, head over to 52qs.com.